Since none of this is true, I might as well be honest. Guys, that sounds like an oxymoron, but that's powerful. It occurred to me this morning, and they say I'm crazy, maybe I am, but we are at the precipice of one of the greatest opportunities in evolved, advanced, societal man, right here, right now. Because the lines between truth and fiction have become so blurred, no one has any clue what's true and what isn't, other than the point that truth has become personally objective. Does that make any sense to any of you? Well, if you're one of our loyal subscribers, I know it does, because you're my kind of crazy and that's why you're here. Guys, I'm just going to ramble a little bit this morning and try to kind of give you the trail as to how these thoughts I've just shared with you came together this morning. We had one heck of a windstorm last night, and it's cold out here this morning. It's October, but it's been up in the 80s during the day, but we've had part of this hurricane that's coming up from Florida come through here last night. Heavy winds knocked down some of our new apple trees, actually. I had to save those this morning. I've got clutter all over the yard. I didn't know the winds were coming, or I would have been proactive in clearing some stuff up. But I don't know, so that's why I'm wearing a coat and a toboggan. It is downright chilly out here this morning. So I get up this morning. I'm writing this morning, which is what I've been doing a lot here lately. It was about 5:30 in the morning. The first line I write in this story I'm working on, it's Trilogy of Terror, Book 3, long overdue, third in a series here. Haven't done, I think part 2 is 4 or 5 years old now. But the first line was, since none of this is true, I may as well be honest. Now, what's that in reference to? That's in reference to the story I'm telling about this military experiment that may or may not be true, that I claim to have been part of. And, Mark Twain said, writing fiction is harder than writing nonfiction because fiction at least has to sound believable. There's truth to that. And even Stephen King in his book on writing talks about how anytime you're writing a story, a work of fiction, you've got to make sure it's believable. Is it believable? Well, guys, the problem I'm having with this story is the fact that it sounds believable, but it shouldn't, because these are the kinds of things that aren't supposed to happen, because only other people's governments do these things. So I don't want you to believe it because it's too close to truth. And I thought, wow, what a conundrum. But then I thought, hey, wait a minute. If I'm telling a story about something that happened when I was in the military, then everybody knows it's fiction anyway, right? Because of all the internet trolls that will say on a video, if you mention anything about having served in the military, or you talk about something that happened in war, they go, this never happened, he's a liar, he's lying. Everybody knows that anybody who was in the military never talks about it, and the fact that he's saying he was in the military means he was never in the military. So I thought, well, there's my out. Because if I'm talking about something that happened while I was in the military, a particular experiment that had to do with temperatures, the Kelvin scale, language, and a serum, it'll blow your mind, guys. Again, it's the kind of stuff you think only other people's governments do. But that was my out, okay? It's like a wash. You want to believe it because it sounds so real, but then you get scared if you believe it because it sounds like the kind of stuff only other people's governments do. But fortunately, since the story is being told from a first-person narrative in which I claimed I was in the military, we know it's not true. So that was my out. So I kept going forward. But that thought, since none of this is true, I may as well be honest. I mean, just saying it, I felt this weight come off my chest. Guys, we live in a world where truth has now become objective based upon the perception of the people receiving the message, because we've all pretty much accepted the fact that the people delivering the message are lying to us. And this is a grand opportunity that we have. And now listen to me. I talked about this here not too long ago, and some people said, oh, we know you're siding with so-and-so, that big political figure, because he says this news is fake, and so now we know where you stand. Guys, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Let's look at the Weather Channel. How more unbiased can you get in news than weather? Okay, and this is off the top of my head because I'm talking about Windstorm this morning. My trees got knocked down, and these rambles are always off the top of my head. But a few weeks ago, we had Hurricane Florence come through, and we all saw the video where there's this guy from the Weather Channel bracing himself against the wind. Oh, the winds are so fierce, it's knocking me down, even though I go to the gym every morning for an hour and a half, and I take my vitamin B12s. And I said that because somebody said something about B12 vitamins in a comment yesterday, and then I got served all these ads on YouTube this morning about vitamin B12. So let's get some more ads because we know AI is watching artificial intelligence, and the truth is what I say it is. And then here goes two guys walking behind him in the background texting all casually like there's no wind at all. That's what I'm talking about. So we know it's all caca. Now, here's where the ramble goes even further. George Carlin was not a comedian. The man was a prophet. I don't know why, but I was thinking about this morning, probably because I'm thinking about truth, how it's distorted. And this opportunity, by the way, I'm talking about is how we are finally at the point in mankind where we can be completely honest, and it doesn't matter. Because people are either going to believe us or they're not. Because, okay, I enlisted in the military during a time of war. I served one tour in Iraq. I was in Mosul from 2008 to 2009. I was a machine gunner. I made it home safely. I got hurt in a non-combat related injury while I was there. I had to go through rehab. Spent time at medical holdover. Got hooked on drugs while I was there. Blah. Okay, everything I just told you, half the people will believe it. The other half won't. Half of them will think that since I made a claim that I was in the military and I fought in a war, that I must be lying because people who do that don't talk about such things. Do you see the freedom that gives me? I can say what I want and I don't have to hold back the truth. So when I'm writing these stories, I need to make it sound believable. I need to make it sound true. You better believe I am because I'm telling the truth. And only half the people will believe it. Guys, I went back and watched the George Carlin video today because I was thinking about these things, and I used to watch him when I was a little child, back in the 1980s, when I was probably too young to be watching that kind of stuff. Well, I certainly couldn't understand it in its depth, in its entirety, but I had a grandmother who loved George Carlin, and she had a very similar personality to him, and this might be where I got mine. She, like him, was cynical, kind of salty, crusty, but highly intelligent. Now, I obviously didn't get my intelligence from my grandmother, George Carlin, because I don't think I have quite much of it. Man, that sounds beautiful. I'm glad I waited to do this ramble this morning. I almost went out to the woodshed, but gosh, it was still so windy, I just didn't want to. So anyway, I would watch these George Carlin videos, and as a young kid, not even a teenager yet, it was striking chords with me, but I wasn't old enough to understand. So I went back this morning and I watched some of his greatest works. And I watched the one called Who Really Controls America. And I'm not being political. I'm just telling you what I watched this morning. You know, we don't discuss politics or religion on this channel. We don't accept donations. We don't e-beg. And we don't give you P.O. boxes. A wonderful lady that I gave a shout out to yesterday asked, she wanted to send us something. And I mentioned in the comment, we don't do that either because that's just another form, as we see it, of e-begging. We are beholden to no one. No one will be beholden to us. So anyway, back in 1982, Carlin was talking about disappearing pensions, about how we were going to put up with it, about how they, you know, the powers that be, were going to be able to do what they wanted to with us because we were going to put up with it. And what I understood now as a 44-year-old man that I didn't understand as a 7 or 8-year-old child, we, even when we know the truth, we're hesitant to speak it in words because of dogma. What I got out of watching Carlin now as a middle-aged man is that he despised dogma. I read more about him, and a lot of what he spoke about, it's not that it opposed his personal views. It's that he despised the way people wrap themselves up in dogmatism, which I despise myself. I've left clubs and groups and organizations in the past of which I agreed completely with the message of these groups, clubs, and organizations, but there were people within these groups, clubs, and organizations who were so dogmatic they drove me away from the beliefs that these groups, clubs, and organizations taught, and of which I believed. And I know there are people watching this video right now who have been in the same experience. It's not that we hate the belief system behind certain religions, or that we hate the belief system behind certain groups are there to help us get better if we suffer with addictions and all these things. It's the dogmatism behind such groups. And that struck a chord with me today, and it didn't back in the 1980s when I watched Carlin as a young child. And how I got to there from truth, I don't know. I mean, that's part of the morning ramble. How do I get to any thought based upon the first one I have? It's just kind of a chain reaction that happens. I can't explain it, but I do embrace it. I don't suffer from insanity. I enjoy every freaking minute of it, and I embrace it, and it leads to some pretty good fiction that might or might not actually be fiction. And with that said, I'm going to get back in there, and I haven't gotten my 1,000 words in yet. I got about 800. I got at least 200 to go. I'm trying to hold myself to account to a minimum of 1,000 words written a day. But I wanted to take a break, come out here on this cold morning, give you a ramble, share my thoughts with you. And I'm going to give you a beautiful parting shot of the homestead. You can hear the wind back there in the forest. At least I hope it's a wind. Hope you guys have a great day, and thanks for being with us again here at Homesteading Off the Grid.